Right now, breaking news this morning, Social Development DG Zane Dangor has resigned, citing a breakdown of relations between himself and Minister Bathabile Dlamini. Let's get more reaction now. We are joined on the line by political analyst Karima Brown. Karima, good morning and thank you for joining us. So the social grants crisis takes its first casualty. Are you surprised that it's been Zane Dangor?
Not at all, Tulas. I think that it is quite interesting that Zane was very coy now on the phone with when you were interviewing him, not wanting to answer certain questions and saying you must ask that to the minister. It is very important to understand, Tulas, that the responsibility, according to the law, to negotiate resides with the accounting officer, the Director General. The fact that the Director General wasn't a part of the negotiations yesterday with CPS, that the Treasury pulled out of those negotiations, it tells you that Zane is disowning that negotiation, and it takes you right back to the company involved, CPS. Now, as we know, the Constitutional Court, way back in 2014, already ruled that the way in which CPS got its initial contract was dodgy, and that is why the Director General had to fight so hard to get this process aligned with the law, aligned with the prescripts of the PMFA. And I think that this is the kernel of the matter. We need to get a response from the minister as to why she seems determined to push this resolution of the matter in such a way that it will put her at odds with the highest court in the land, Tula.
What do you read into the fact that he opted to be the one to fall rather than, stick it out and try and get this process to be done in a legal way that he says he wanted? What does that tell us about where the chips fall politically?
I think what is important to realize here is that increasingly senior civil servants, including directors general, are coming under increasing pressure from the political principals to make decisions that are inconsistent and outside the law for narrow political reasons. We've seen it in other departments. We've seen it in places like the SABC. We've certainly seen it in the security cluster, where a court order, for example, was ignored and the police went ahead and arrested someone, even though legally they were not allowed to do it. I think what Zane is doing here is that he is doing the best he can to protect his own integrity as a state official. You ought to know that he has been an advisor through 3 ministers of social development. He started out with Zola Square. He was there when Edna Molewa was there, and of course he is here with Bathabile Dlamini. Before that, he was an advisor, and I think of November last year, he became the Director General. So he's intimately involved with what the department is about, not just around the grant issue, but around policy, around the national minimum wage. He was critical in the NEDLAC discussions. So he's been there for a very long time. And I think that he faces the kinds of choices that a lot of civil servants face under the Zuma administration. They either have to choose the integrity or they have to choose the political principle. I think he chose, the former.
And speaking of the goings-on in the Zuma administration, you mentioned, of course, that, Zane Dangor, the Director General, was not part of the negotiations with CPS, but other people who were not part of that is Treasury. What's going on here, Karima? Aren't they supposed to be an integral part of, we've reached a crisis point. Normally, Treasury only gets involved at a later stage, but as we are dealing with a crisis, why are they not involved? Does this say anything about political allegiances, and also factor in that President Jacob Zuma just yesterday expressed his confidence in both ministers, including Bathabile Dlamini?
This is what is really the interesting thing. It appears as if as President Zuma himself was speaking through both sides of his mouth. He said yesterday in Parliament he has full confidence in the Social Development Minister. And then, of course, Treasury issues a statement yesterday afternoon saying that it's not part of the CPS negotiations and raising the flag around procedure and legality, which brings us back to this point, to why is the Social Development Minister so keen to pass or follow a path that is going to put her at odds with the law. Now, we know that the finance minister has been in conversation with the social development minister through a series of engagements where he indicated to her that what she wanted to do in terms of the 6 options that were on the table was going to be unlawful according to the legal advice the Treasury had sought. Now, President Zuma cabinet decisions also really confusing. We saw Jeff Radebe saying that the cabinet has full confidence in Minister Pravin Gordhan. Now, you can't have full confidence in Minister Pravin Gordhan as well as Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini on the issue of the social grants, because the one wants to act within the legal prescript, the other one seems very keen to take us to a situation where the Constitutional Court is actually going to frown upon the way in which things are being done, particularly because there is already a ruling. There's been very specific stuff that the court has asked for that the department simply has not done. Now we have a Director General who, in terms of the law, is the accounting officer, steps down, wasn't part of those negotiations. So what exactly was negotiated yesterday? And more importantly, how consistent is it with the law? And what exactly is the president going to do about it? That is the key question, Tula.
So with that context in mind, Karima, do you expect any more casualties? More importantly, do you expect the political head of the department, the minister, to fall?
I will find it very surprising if the minister falls out of her own accord. She is one of the closest associates of President Jacob Zuma. You would know she is virtually joined at the hip of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the candidate of the Women's League for the ANC presidency to replace President Zuma come December this year. Now, Bathabile Dlamini obviously is also the Minister of Social Development. I don't see her falling out of her own accord. In fact, she is behaving pretty much like Minister Faith Mutambi, who has on several occasions told the African National Congress that she doesn't account to them, she accounts to the president. And Bathabile Dlamini, for example, not pitching up in Parliament at Scopa in the week, saying that she's already accounted. We know that Bathabile Dlamini and Zodwa, the person who was the project manager for SASSA, who appeared before Scopa, who simply couldn't answer some of the questions, had met with the president a week ago. We don't know what the discussions are that took place there. And I think that it's going to be interesting. There's talk that Bathabile Dlamini might have to face the top 6 of the African National Congress at the officials meeting on Monday. I'm not sure exactly if that is going to take place, but it's going to be very interesting to see. Already Kosanto has called for her head. So the calls are growing, but of course President Zuma is the one who appoints ministers. Ministers serve at his pleasure. So the ball very much in his court, to us.
What do you think President Jacob Zuma is saying to Minister Bathabile Dlamini? Can the president and his administration afford to be found to be offside of the Constitutional Court once again? Because if they go ahead with this contract in the absence of some kind of accommodation by the Constitutional Court, that's exactly what they'll be doing.
Well, the truth of the matter is Treasury has already indicated that they're not going to be part of anything that is going to be frowned upon legally and that is outside of the prescripts of the resignations that are there. So that's the first thing. The statement yesterday really came full circle on that, to us. The second thing, of course, is that President Zuma has already fallen foul of the Constitutional Court in the Nkandla matter. The minister has already fallen foul in terms of the SASSA contract, which was dodgy, and that's why she got a very ring-fenced arrangement, which she is now 4 weeks away from being in violation of again. So they're skating on very, very thin ice. The African National Congress cannot afford, as a governing party, to be seen to be undermining the rule of law and the highest court in the land. So I think whatever it is that President Zuma is going to be saying to Bathabile Dlamini, it cannot be go toe-to-toe with the Constitutional Court and work outside of that. I think the ANC is going to be hard-pressed to rein in anybody, whether it is the president or the minister, and urge them to act within the prescripts of the law.
Right. Political analyst Karima Brown, thank you so much for joining us this morning.